Welcome, everybody, to the first free Tapping Out of Trauma teleclass of 2016. We will be presenting the role of memory in understanding and renegotiating trauma for tapping practitioners. And I am Dr. Craig Weiner.
And I am Suzanne Fageol.
And we are really looking forward to this. We've just had an amazing response around the world, and we're just very grateful to be able to get this information to you. I just wanted to share a little bit of our vision for why we do this, because every year, twice per year, we offer these free teleclasses with cutting-edge research information, guest presenters, really with the vision of promoting the safe and effective practice for tapping practitioners when working with trauma. Tapping Out of Trauma is a teaching training institution, and we're committed to gathering the most current thinking, the most current practices, and drawing from the world of somatic trauma education and practice, which of course includes EFT. More thorough training in this work is offered online, only for EFT and tapping practitioners who have that experience, as an 8-week webinar course. And we offer that twice per year, and the next one will be beginning in a few weeks on April 1st. The course also, we're proud to say, has been approved to offer 19 hours of approved CEs for mental health care practitioners, nurses, social workers, counselors, as well as those 19 hours being applied to EFT coaches that need their CPD yearly requirements. And we're very happy to present that and offer that today.
So a little bit about ourselves first. I'm Suzanne Fageol. I'm a certified counselor and a somatic trauma release educator, an EFT and Matrix Reimprinting practitioner. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I've been educating practitioners in the helping professions about working with people with trauma and stress for the past 10 years. Craig?
Yes, and I wear multiple hats beside Tapping Out of Trauma together with my wife, Alina Frank. We are EFT trainers for multiple organizations, Matrix Reimprinting trainers, practitioners, neuroscience geek, chiropractor, and really just love exploring safe and effective ways for working and helping people to transform their lives. And this is part of what I love to do.
So I want to acknowledge someone here before we move forward. Craig and I were inspired to do this class on memory after having read Dr. Peter Levine's new book, Trauma and Memory, Brain and Body in a Search for the Living Past. And we were very impressed with this book. Like Waking the Tiger and In an Unspoken Voice, Peter's books hold a real amazing amount of information that can be very useful to tapping practitioners as well as other somatic trauma people. So Peter holds doctorates in both medical biophysics and psychology, and he's the developer of what's called somatic experiencing, which is a body awareness approach to healing trauma. He's consulted for NASA and been a member of the Institute of World Affairs Task Force for Psychologists for Social Responsibility and developing responses for large-scale disasters and ethnopolitical warfare. So he comes with a lot of credentials and knows very much what he's doing. And he's brought some new aspects of memory to light here that we're excited to present to you. Some of it will seem familiar to you, but we'll highlight that which he's brought in that's basically cutting-edge work. And if you want to know more about him, you can either go to www.traumahealing.com or www.somaticexperiencing.com. And if you Google him, you'll see lots. And also, if you want to watch him in action, you can also Google him on YouTube. So that's what we wanted to make sure that you understood we were getting the material from. And if this really interests you even more, we suggest you read the book. So we want to jump off by talking about the function of memory. And I want to start with a quote from Peter. Memory, when reduced to its most vital function, has to do with securing a future that chooses selectively from the past and builds on what was effective while not repeating those responses that were harmful. In short, securing a future that is influenced but not overly constrained by our history. And one of the things that this quote points to is the fact that memory is a vital function and that it is a process. Most people think of memory as a static thing, and it's actually a process. And this is one of our important takeaways today, that memory shifts each time that you recall it. And so it continues forward in time and according to your experiences in life. And this is a really important concept to really make sure you understand. So we're going to take you into a little story scenario as a way of parsing out all these issues about the function and nature of memory. So we're going to take you to John, who's an advertising executive. He's very good at promoting creative ideas to potential corporate clients, and he often finds himself giving presentations a lot, and he's really skilled at this. And one of the reasons that he's so effective is that he has fond memories of selling things as a kid. He had the best lemonade stand in the neighborhood, and he's banked a host of good memories that set the stage for him as an adult to excel and enjoy working with clients, pitching clients. Now, Linda, who is also part of his team, is an advertising executive, and she has great creative abilities and is known for her creation of innovative and engaging ad campaigns. So one day, John gets sick, and the presentation of a new ad campaign that Linda has created is given to her to present to the client. And she's actually excited about the opportunity, even though she doesn't do that aspect of the work very often, and believes that they will love her ideas. So it comes as a real surprise to her when she stands up to present her ideas and she freezes. She becomes flooded with feelings of shame and embarrassment, and suddenly recalls a time in third grade when she was asked to present to her class and she had left her report at home on the counter. Despite that, her teacher forced her to stand in front of the class and give her report anyway. She went blank, and her classmates all started laughing. So here are two scenarios of intelligent business professionals whose responses in a similar situation vary significantly. Both scenarios build from the function of human memory. For us to understand how each individual, Linda and John, is impacted by memory, we need to kind of lay down a foundation of the function and nature of memory. So, Craig, you want to start?
Yeah. And I know that in the title, you're waiting to hear about trauma. We're going to be moving into traumatic memory, but we're really laying a larger picture first. So when we're looking at the function of memory, let's just kind of set a foundation here. So memory really exists in many different forms, and it does that to serve a variety of ongoing adaptive processes of survival and living and learning as we live to be able to implement things that we've learned from the past. And so for John, in our story, it meant building up this host of positive memories, right, from his childhood, the lemonade stand, his businesses as a kid, and set the stage for him to be successful as a sales exec as an adult. Linda, on the other hand, had not so pleasant a memory of that incident in the third grade, we'll just name that one for now, and that served the unique purpose of helping her to survive in a difficult situation later in life, and we're going to talk about that. She froze, so her freezing was really an adaptive function of memory that informed her of what to her now became and felt like a dangerous situation. And it was a dangerous situation for her. Her body told her that. Both were healthy functions of memory. Both were working and intact. Both involved different parts of the brain. But, unfortunately, while Linda's memory helped her to signal danger, it was a maladaptive behavior that unfolded for her. The function of memory is to help us operate cooperatively, to help promote effective functioning and well-being, and to guide us through all kinds of new situations, and really help us find our way in the world. Okay, so memories give us a context for emerging experiences, but memories that, for Linda, the memory that should have helped Linda choose selectively from the past and build on what was effective, instead impacted her negatively, emotionally, and instead of initiating and strengthening learning, it led her to a maladaptive response as an adult in the situation. Now, John's positive memories, built from childhood, and they helped to strengthen his self-confidence and his learning. Linda's memory, while signaling danger, taught her to be afraid of something that really was not truly dangerous.
So, what should have been a dynamic and changing process of building on earlier memories stayed static for Linda in this instance, in that she continued to associate standing in front of people to be a threat for her. And this is a hallmark of traumatic memories, that they are fixed and static. They do not move forward in time with our life experiences. And the frozen impact of her traumatic third-grade experience prevented her in the current situation from forming a new strategy. The traumatic memory restricted her capacity to be present in the here and now. Let me say that again. Her traumatic memory restricted her capacity to be truly present here and now in the situation as an adult. So, memory should be a continual reconstruction which allows us to bring in new information that continually builds on past experiences and learning in order to enhance our capacity for living well. So in John's case, his reconstruction of his early memories allowed him to continually add new experiences that select and add and sometimes even delete what is not necessary for him to be successful. It allowed him to rearrange and update information to serve his ongoing adaptive process for success at work in this case. So, to recap, memory, number one, helps us to promote effective functioning and well-being. 2, memory gives us a context for new experiences. And 3, it is dynamic and changing. Your memory changes every time you remember it, which in turn allows us to update and rearrange information that helps us adapt to new situations. And another quote from Peter Levine, can we observe our memories without changing in the process of recall? The short answer is no. However, traumatic memories remain fixed and static and stop us from moving forward and updating experiences in our life. Let's take a journey deeper into understanding different types of memory and how each of them helps us to learn and adapt.
Okay, so we're going to dig into some different types of memory, and it's really important that we understand these as tapping practitioners because understanding the different types of memory has a significant impact on how we work with them and which we're working with. So we're going to start off with what's called explicit memory or declarative memory, like I declare this is what happened. So explicit memory, as it's described, is like a catalog of details. It's like recalling phone numbers. Okay, it's lists, it's detailed, it's linear. Explicit memory allows for conscious remembering. We remember things consciously. I remember yesterday what I had for dinner. Okay, it helps me to remember that I'm supposed to pick up the dry cleaning this afternoon. Explicit memory allows me to tell a story about, about something that, it allows somebody to retell the story about, let's say, the birth of their daughter, a joyous memory. Explicit memory is often orderly. It's linear. It's retelling your day at work. It's highly structured in the cerebral cortex for hardwiring and an operating system. So something like solving an algebra equation, remembering how to do that. So all these explicit memories or declarative memories look like that, and they're the way that most people think of memory when they talk about memory. Now, I also want to clarify that beside the declarative memory, there's also within explicit something that's called episodic memory, and I want to make a little distinction. So explicit episodic memory comes online about 3.5 years old, because that's when the hippocampus comes online, okay, in the midbrain. Episodic memory, so these memory episodes, have kind of a quality. There's an autobiographical, dreamy, ambiguous, a little vague, yet still conscious kind of quality to it. So maybe something like, all right, I seem to remember going on a family camping trip to Yosemite when I was about 5 years old. I don't remember a lot of the details, but I do remember that that our dog ran away on that trip. So there's kind of like this vague, foggy aspects, but still remembering detail. These types of memories are often described as warm and textured. So I remember, like, when I was sick when I was a little kid, my mom would put me in her bed upstairs, bundled me up in blankets, and make me macaroni for lunch, the curly Q macaroni with tomato pasta sauce. And that has a particular quality to that memory. This type of memory is infused often with feeling tones and vitality, whether negative or positive, like how sore my throat was after having my tonsils removed and how good the ice cream tasted after that. So I think you're starting to get the idea. Episodic memories can encode our personal life experiences, and they kind of reveal a way of unfolding, like remembering getting slippers every year for Christmas. So there's an encodement and giving some meaning to my life and the history. These type of memories form a dynamic interface between the rational declarative type memory and the irrational emotional realm. So it's like a bridge across the two. So like learning to ride a two-wheeler, and I remember the feeling that I thought I would fall off as soon as the training wheels were to be removed, and there was this quality of both an emotional state and a rational retelling. This type of memory promotes the formation of what's called a coherent narrative. And a coherent narrative is something that we each create to make sense of our world. So, Mom told me every time that I got close to the stove to not touch it because it was hot, and I'd get burned, and I would hurt myself if I got too close. And so I learned things about Mom, about what things were safe, about what things were not, and so it helps to create that narrative. And with these memories, with each subsequent recalling, the memory gets enriched. So more meaning is built into it every time I recall it. And this is really how memory should operate. So, I learned, for example, every time that I'd visit my grandma, and she'd make me a cup of hot cocoa, I learned how very much she loved me. And each time I experienced that, it built on that memory. And that's, again, this is exactly how memory should operate when functioning in a healthy and effective and efficient way. I hope that helps to clarify explicit declarative and explicit episodic memories. And now we're going to take it in a different direction. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay. So the other type of memory is called implicit. And there are two types of implicit memory, emotional and procedural. And this gets a little tricky because often they happen together and kind of commingle. So what's important to remember overall about implicit memory is that it's very compelling. And this is really important. It cannot be called up deliberately, so it's not conscious. Linda, when she froze with fear, at first she had the fear and she had the freeze, but she didn't consciously sit there and think, oh, let's see, I remember in the 3rd grade I did that. The memory did come back to her, but that's not where it started. It was unconscious. Implicit memories tend to sort of arise as a collage of sensation and emotions and behavior. And they are organized around emotions and or skills and procedures. Now, here's another very interesting point. We often think, as I said, of memory as a thing, but actually implicit memory are referred to in the trade of psychology as action patterns. We don't usually think of memory as an action or activity or a pattern of behavior. So just hold on, because this is a really important concept, that memory, implicit memory, is actually an action pattern. So even though the two types of implicit memory, emotional and procedural, can often occur together, right now we're just going to separate them out to make some distinctions. So first I want to talk about emotional memory. Now, one of the things that's interesting in the latest research is emotions are shared by all mammals. So there's a universal felt sense emotions among all mammals that includes surprise, fear, anger, disgust, sadness, and joy. And these emotional memories serve two purposes. First, they signal to another what we are feeling and needing. And second, they signal ourselves what we are needing and feeling. They signal another what we are needing and feeling, and they signal ourselves what we are needing and feeling. This allows for two individuals to co-participate in each other's feelings, which is a pretty important social skill. So the function of emotional memory is to flag and encode important experiences for immediate and potent reference later on, i.e., Mommy hugged me when I fell down and it felt really good, and I knew she would always do that for me. They also prompt organizing themes for action. So, for instance, when I fell down, I know to find Mommy because she will make me feel better. So an organizing theme for action. I get hurt, I go find Mommy. They also provide relevant survival and social-based data that help us to inform any kind of an appropriate response in a given situation, especially when to stop and think would be too slow or off the mark. So like for our ancestors who knew wild animals were dangerous, to come face to face with a bear, the memory of fear offered immediate knowledge to run. Somebody who was looking at a wild bear was not going to say, oh, gee, I think there's a wild bear here. I'm wondering what I should do about this situation. They would have been eaten at that point. So memories provide the relevant survival skills for any situation. So, and you can see how important this has been for us as for species survival throughout history. So, triggered by features of a present situation in which there are similar types and intensities of emotion, which in the past evoked procedural memories or survival-based actions or fixed action patterns, like Linda, who in her third grade experienced froze, and then in her current sales situation presentation froze again. So what is really important here to understand about this implicit memories is that, first of all, they're unconscious. Secondly, they create action, and they are experienced in the body as physical sensation. I repeat, emotional memories are experienced in the body as physical sensation. Craig, I'm going to ask you to talk about procedural implicit memory.
Okay, I think this is going to be new information for many people, certainly not everybody. But in the type of implicit memories, okay, that are known as procedural, I think a lot of times people will use the term a body memory as a way to describe that, and it commingles with the emotional memory that Suzanne just described. And there's really three categories of this. So this one is commonly spoken of, if you know what procedural memory is. It's what are called learned motor actions. Easy one that people commonly use to describe it is when you learn to ride a bicycle. So there is this way that when you learn to ride a bicycle and you hop back on, even if you haven't been on a bicycle for 30 years and you get back on, your body will know how to grasp the handlebars, maybe how to change some of the gears, how to hit the brakes, how to pedal, how to balance. It's like your body just knows how to do that. So it's a learned motor action is one type of this implicit procedural memory. So that's one. Second type are emergency responses that call on our basic survival instincts in the face of a threat. So if we meet a bear, our body knows to brace, to contract, to get our fists ready to grab something, to fight or flee or freeze in that particular situation. That emergency response of knowing the part that knows what to do is a type of procedural memory. And these responses also play a really important role in the formation and the resolution, which we're going to be getting to, of traumatic memories. Just setting the stage. The third are active blueprints, really, for all living organisms. So that is the primal organic response, or a tendency to either approach, this is literally physically, to approach or to avoid, to attract or to repulse, that come or go type of physical response in the face of a situation is very much an implicit procedural memory. We approach sources of nourishment and growth, and we certainly avoid sources of injury and toxicity. So these kinds of movement patterns that are learned and become this kind of memory form the underlying primitive motivational rudders, we'll say, in our lives that are unconscious, and they drive the choices in our lives of how we react and respond in situations from our past. So what has recently been discovered in the research is that there's a very complex capacity for assessing whether we approach or avoid something. It's located in the upper brainstem and in the thalamus, and there's about 80% accuracy for making implicit choices between this nourishment versus threat. And this is a new discovery. It's hardwired in us. It's not conscious. It's not a conscious choice. So the existence of procedural memories, which really lie beneath our waking consciousness, really, is the key to working with traumatic memories. Really, really important. So I'm just emphasizing that implicit, procedural, body-based memories that intermingle with the emotional type that Suzanne described is the key doorway for being able to work towards integration and resolution of trauma. Would you take it from there, Suzanne?
Sure. So, how do we look at procedural memory and the structure of trauma? Because now you can see how trauma becomes inscribed as memory. So we need to remember that trauma shocks the brain, stuns the mind, and freezes the body. And that trauma becomes riveted and hardwired into the body's instinctive reactions to perceived threats, like Linda's automatic fixed action pattern or procedural memory of freezing when she had to present in front of the group. And so we become fixated in certain emotions, fear, terror, rage. And for Linda, it was fear. And in habitually effective mood states, it continues to work its way in as a habit. So every time I stand in front of a group, I feel fear, and my action pattern is to freeze, because trauma memories are fixed and static. They don't move forward. There are no new memories to help us move past that fixed, static action pattern. So now we come to the renegotiation of memory. So trauma comes in through the body, and renegotiating trauma requires working through the body. As trauma comes in, so it exits. Let me say that again. Trauma comes in through the body, and renegotiating trauma requires working through the body. As it comes in, so it exits. So our present feeling may be the major factor determining what and how we remember a particular event. So Linda now adds the present emotion of fear to the past one, and she sets up an even more ingrained fixed action pattern that she will always feel fear, when asked to present in front of a group of people. So how do you work with that? Well, changing our current feeling state is an essential condition for effective work with trauma memories. So Linda needs to find a way to change the memory of fear if she is going to successfully renegotiate the trauma of presenting in front of people. Our present mood, emotions, and somatic sensations, also called felt sense, are generated for whatever reasons, profoundly influence what we are remembering, as well as how we deal with them and reconstruct them anew. So right now, Linda's fear is driving her and she will continue to respond with fear in any similar situation. The linking and the processing of the raw emotion, the nuanced feeling, the fact is that communication with chosen others is essential to moving from trauma. There's a whole field of this work which is called Interpersonal Neurobiology, of whom Dr. Daniel Siegel is probably the most famous representative of it. So what we need to know is, in order to form a new memory that will help to change what was a fixed action pattern in trauma, we need to work with another person who understands this. So working with a chosen professional who understands this process is essential for moving from trauma, where there is little distinction between past and present, to an open future, which is built on new experiences, information, and possibilities. And I think you'll begin to see how tapping is coming into this, which we'll get to in a second. So this is what Levine suggests is necessary for the renegotiation of trauma, that it actually cannot be done on one's own, but needs the presence of another who is not in the same emotional state, but is rather in a balanced flow state. So in co-creation with this professional person, the person needs to work through the body to move procedural and emotional memory along in time. So together, the client and the practitioner work to build new positive memories. And these new positive memories are also known as resources. So we're building new resources to root new memories in the here and now. So another way to say this is the person is now working with resources, positive memories, to lay down a brand new neural network, which in the end will be stronger than the old one. So if we were working with Linda, the object would be to establish new memories that counter her felt sense of fear. This method of renegotiation, because it works through the body, is called somatic renegotiation. Peter has one method of doing this he calls pendulation, which you can read about in his book. But, surprise, surprise, another effective way to effect this renegotiation is tapping. So, Craig, you want to talk about how tapping is a somatic renegotiation method?
Sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use EFT as the foundation of a way of working with Linda and just explain it a little bit in context with what we've been talking about it today. So In Linda's case, one way to work with her most current situation first, okay, because we do not go to the first and worst initially. We work with somebody with what is currently coming up for them, which creates rapport, safety, connection. So we begin with the current situation in which she felt fear and froze, and we would create a setup phrase. So in EFT we call that the setup phrase, and in this setup phrase, Linda would be recalling her procedural memory or her fixed action pattern, and it would look something like this. While tapping on the side of hand, even though I feel this fear, she'd repeat back, even though I feel this fear. Even though I feel this fear and my gut is in knots and I can barely breathe when standing in front of the clients to present my proposal, I deeply and completely respect and accept myself. So we've modified and made sure that some of those words came from Linda. So we're play acting that those were the descriptions that she gave and the words that she used, because we always use their words. The reminder phrase on this would be something like this fear, this knot in my gut, this not being able to breathe, this fear, this knot in my gut, etc., using those somatic reference points for the felt sense that she described. Now, in doing this, in this method, the procedural memory is countered by the second half of the setup phrase, right? So there's the even though this is what's happening and I feel this, I deeply and completely, and we used respect and accept myself in this particular situation. Now, that process that reduces the SUD intensity level is an oscillation between the two parts of the setup statement, okay, and the resource of tapping on the meridian acupoints to lower the intensity of the emotion. And we know in some studies that it's shown to reduce cortisol by close to 30% in one study. So what we're doing is we're creating this oscillation between this is what I feel and the acceptance statement. While tapping, this creates a back and forth oscillation. Now, also, this process orients her in that process, just that little bit, to the here and now, which is critically important, because in this room is where she feels safe. In this room, in this present moment, is where she feels comfortable working with a practitioner that's balancing her and in a flow state. So this whole process has her, in a sense, renegotiating what for her was a small t trauma memory in the boardroom. Okay, this is the renegotiation of a trauma. When the SUD level is low enough on this particular event, she might be ready to return back to recalling that third grade original incident that may have initially set up the current fixed action pattern of fearing and freezing in that situation. Now, when we start working with this earlier memory, the same principles apply. The resourcing is found, right? So the resources, so we're consciously resourcing the client. The resourcing is found in working with another person who's safe, by orienting to the here and now where it's safe, and using the oscillation of the two parts of the setup phrase and the physicality of tapping on their points. So, same thing in the past situation, just like we did in the more current situation. Now, obviously, this is a big piece. There's a lot of information going on here, and that's not all there is to know about working with traumatic memories, of course, but we just wanted to provide some important insights. So just what we covered today demonstrates the importance of understanding the power of memory, the distinction that the different types of traumatic memories are, how they're recalled, how they're felt, how we're working with them with tapping. This demonstrates the importance of the power of memory, how critical it is, especially to proceed at a pace that the client can handle without feeling significantly stressed or re-triggered. Our goal is always to proceed safely, and as we renegotiate these traumas, we move into a place of empowering a client so that they can integrate and they can be resourced, so when there are triggers out in their situation in life, they are not all of a sudden time traveling back into the past. There's a nice quote that Peter has in his book that I really like, so I'm going to read this because it's appropriate timing for it. He said, "When we're able to look back at a traumatic memory from an empowered stance, The recollection will be updated, though this agency had been available and fully functional at the time of the original trauma. This newly reconsolidated experience, parentheses, after tapping, then becomes the new updated memory, where the empowered present somatic experience profoundly alters the past memory. These emerging resources become the bridging of the past and the present, what he calls the remembered present. So for me, that just speaks back to what happens when we do our tapping work and we're able to now revisit a memory from our past that once caused our body-mind to get activated and stressed, and now we're able to remember it in a different way, not only how we're recalling it consciously, but our body in the remembered present recalls it in a whole different way than we did beforehand. And that makes a huge difference for a person. Suzanne?
Thank you, Craig. So if you want to understand more about oscillation, resourcing, orienting, interpersonal neurobiology, the use of felt sense in processing emotions, and other components of working with trauma in conjunction with doing tapping, we would suggest you take the more intensive Tapping Out of Trauma online course that begins April 1st. You can find out more at www.tappingoutoftrauma.com, where you can register, find the class topics that are listed, and a complete list in frequently asked questions of course questions, and has a host of reviews by some of the most well-respected EFT and tapping trainers and practitioners from around the world. You can also register to do your 19 hours of CEUs or ongoing tapping credits. So we'd like to thank you for joining us today, for your interest and passion for this important topic, and we hope that you have learned something today. So on behalf of my colleague Craig and I would like to thank you for listening and hope that you will consider taking the course if this is of interest to you. Craig, want to add anything?
No, I just want to thank you for your commitment, for wanting to continue to learn and implement that into your personal and professional lives. We look forward to seeing you at future events. We will stay in communication as we offer them. Tapping Out of Trauma begins on April 1st, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for joining us today.